Good afternoon, everyone. Look, thank you for coming to our seminar day, which is based on commercializing your library. This actually follows a theme from last year. I don't know if some people attended, but we did a seminar last year based on credit crunch or evolution. And what we did last year is we actually talked about file-based workflows and actually the change in mentality, the change in structure and managing productions and what's going on from there. And we were asking the questions, this ever-decreasing budget, this technology that's coming in, whether this was evolutionary moments that was going on rather than just the statement of credit crunch, which was a very big theme at BVE 2009. So the idea of the seminar today is to continue that thought process, and what we're asking you to do is just look a bit further forward in what you're doing. So where we are from last year is the process of moving to file-based workflows is really taking a grip now. We're now involved in building lots of systems. And what the beauty about this, obviously traditionally we thought this was based in very big post-production, certainly in the broadcasters modes, but this file-based workflow, this ability to actually move media around on the data IT infrastructure is migrating down and further down, giving us a lower cost entry, smaller scale systems that allow us to have the automation and design of those things. So just very quickly, you'll probably go around the show today and you'll see file-based workflow, file-based acquisition. These are the key quotes as everyone do, and I put that in my 80s or 70s quote format. So obviously the idea was, ingesting the information, and we've shown a brief diagram. It's actually in the catalog if you get a chance to look. But the idea is as we're ingesting the information, we're putting it on storage. We all know about SAN-based storage with Unities and XSANs and DVS Spicer boxes, whatever you've been using before as your shared storage. And we've all had that collaborative workflow. And in that collaborative workflow, we've all been using technologies that we sometimes veer away from in our day-to-day subject. One of the biggest technologies we're using all the time that we realize is metadata applications. And metadata always seems to be a very scary word, but timecode is metadata. Real number is metadata. Shoot description is metadata. It's just another terminology, and there's a way of utilizing that metadata and making it work for us and actually earn money from us. So today's seminar is about, how can we use that metadata and how can we manage what is potentially a very large upfront investment to go to file-based workflow, and how can we use that for the future to actually make it earn money for us. So one of the key elements in our file-based workflow is where we have that centralized storage, which, as I say, you guys are probably very much aware of with Unities, LAN shares, XSANs, etc., is we now have tiers of storage. We have the idea of online storage, high performance, high bandwidth storage, which allows multiple people real-time access to do real-time effects, etc. We've learned now that we cannot afford to archive or store media on that storage. It's too expensive. And we're learning the process of what we've determined as nearline storage. So obviously with nearline storage, if a project arrives at a post house, arrives at a production house, they work and it says, okay, I'm going to come back to that in 2 weeks, we now know to migrate that to our lower cost storage. And we're starting to understand those tiers. Okay, but now what we're really starting to pick up on is archive storage. And this is what we're going to be talking about today and trying to understand what that means for us. Now we know traditionally what archive means. Typically we're going to go to a data-based tape format, LTO. It's a very common terminology in this arena. And the reason why we archive is because we want to, just back that up, we want to return to our project. Now obviously with file-based acquisition, archive becomes a much more important word to us, because when we traditionally had our beta tapes or our HD cam, digibeta, I better mention D5, D3, bring Panasonic in the picture, we always relied on just saving the project information, and we'd always be able to go back to our tapes. But obviously today we don't have the original information in any file format. We have to have it archived, and we have to manage it in an almost IT structure to that. So there's a cost implication, and we're really starting to understand how do we invest in that cost? How do we start making that transition, that cost? So today's seminar is really about, okay, let's not get into the issues about archive and data. Let's look at archive and let's think, how can I make that archive work for me even further? Okay, and there's some key phrases in there. And one of the things, is metadata. And one of the things we're going to be very much bringing up is about how we associate metadata with archive to make our archive more available for searching. I'm actually going to stop there right at that point because I'm really pleased to say that I've got Anne Garner from OmniMovi. She's going to join us. Anne is actually currently working on the project with Route 6, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But she's going to talk to you about how we can monetize our archive and make it available for reviewing. So I'm going to hand you over to Anne for now, and then I'll join you again a bit later on. Thank you, Anne.
So OmniMovi produces stock footage for sale in the global library market. And today I want to talk to you about how important effective keywording and metadata is in order for us to bring that stock to market. Why use, indeed, a still image when in fact a moving image has more impact? And in fact it's that notion that's seen the market grow since the mid-1990s, when in fact it was actually 10 years behind the stock stills market. And it's with the advent of broader bandwidth that we're allowing faster downloads, and it's seen the market grow enormously. At that time, any search was undertaken by contacting a researcher at a library and asking specifically for a woman lying on a desk listening to music, and it would be down to the understanding of their cataloguing processes and their visual memory to be able to retrieve such an image. But with the advent of the new broader bandwidths, we see now that today we're only 2 years behind the stock stills market. The market is broadly segmented into producers and libraries. And amongst the libraries, the largest are the North American Getty, Corbis, PhotoSearch, and Thought Equity. And it's only Thought Equity that's actually recently, in the last 5 years, been developed solely around footage. In terms of production companies, there are actually a relatively small amount of large, mature production companies. And those companies, as a byproduct, have run libraries of the productions that they make. And so, for example, HBO, ITN, ABC, they all have very large libraries running footage that is selling footage which is being produced as a result of their program making. It's said of ITN that they have got a gateway of over 1 million hours of iconic archive and creative footage which is available for sale. I want to run through the three main models in which footage is sold. Some of you may be well aware of these models, but I have to assume that you don't know. So the first one, rights managed. I'm not assuming that you're going to be able to read this, but basically rights managed is sold on an exclusive basis. It's priced according to how you use it, how long you use it for, what territory you sell it into, and what medium. In this case, this advertising clip is going to be used worldwide, all media, for up to a year, and that's going to sell in at around £3,800. It is always shot at broadcast level, 35mm HD, and it's got a reputation of being creative conceptually and can actually be a trigger for producers. It's shot to edit, very often from many angles, to allow for multiple permutations in the final edit. These are some of the main users who will buy rights managed, and it's fairly obvious they're the higher end production companies. Royalty free, however, is also shot at broadcast quality, but it's sold without any limitations to its use, to the time it can be used, where it can be used, how many times it can be used, and the prices are fixed. The prices nowadays are segmented according to HD and right down to low resolution, which is for obviously web design and small presentations. The one thing is, it's not exclusive. So if you're buying a royalty-free clip, you can expect that your competition is going to be using it in an advertising campaign or any other presentation. A close rival and snapping at its heels now is microstock, which has emerged in the last 5 years, firstly with Alamy, who offered photographers and the like the ability to upload their own stills on the website. And it's almost like operating like a marketplace. You can see here that you can sell stock or buy stock. The thing is that with the advent of these new digital technologies and processing, it's not just photographers that are uploading on here. In fact, it's the general public. And there are millions and millions of stills to be had on these libraries. But of course, there are questions about quality. And these questions about quality aren't actually being borne out in the results of the sales that are being made from design agencies. There is undoubtedly a lot of lower quality imagery, but in fact there is a big market here, and they've just started in the last few years to sell footage in this way. Only iStock, Photalia and Clip Dealer currently sell footage. iStock is owned by Getty, which is an interesting development. You see, it's still segmented in its pricing structure, but a £62 will buy an HD clip. Obviously, it's non-exclusive, and £11 will buy you a viewing clip. Their market is shared. They still sell into TV production companies, art directors, etc., but there's a long tail of end users here, including web designers, educational personnel, PowerPoint presentations. It's a big market, and it's one which we haven't even really realised how big it's going to grow. These are some of the usage that footage is put to. We are becoming so much more footage literate. We're now not averse to seeing footage on our billboards in the tubes, on our phones, and marketing stimuli. So we know that the market is growing. These are some of the genres that people shoot stock footage or use stock footage for. They're amongst some of them, but these are the main ones. And the ones that are highlighted in white, I hope you can all read them, broadly speaking, come from the byproducts of production companies like HBO, ITN. So their libraries will be filled with material that maybe was a result of a sports coverage or a news coverage item. Lifestyle at the bottom, highlighted in orange, which is what we shoot, is shot more on a bespoke level. It's costly to produce because we're having to address the needs of real people in real and emotive life scenarios. Within lifestyle, there are genres covering all of life's events, business, leisure, and so on. And all of them have to be keyworded. All genres have to be keyworded in a way in which they can be found. So when we're keywording for business, for example, it's not just a question of keywording what's in the room, what the specific age group is of the people in the room, and who's there. We've got to keyword for conceptual and emotive keywords which denote the power or the success or any of those other emotive connotations. There even is a whole genre in lifestyle concepts. If I go to this clip of a red kite and a blue sky, those 4 emotive keywords are what sells this clip. It isn't the fact that it's a red kite, it's the fact that it's got connotations of some emotive keywording. Similarly, this clip here has the same 3 keywords attached to it, but there's one at the end. And what we're showing is that we're basically open to interpretation. I certainly would find that fearful. And what we've realised is that with the millions of clips that are in circulations, libraries have got to understand their market. And the market is changing so rapidly. In the last 10 years, the market's grown. But for 20 years, libraries have been developing taxonomies or systems whereby they understand who's buying their footage, how they do their searches, and what methods they use to find the footage. So they have to develop this thing called effective keywording taxonomies, which basically comprise control vocabularies of comprehensive keywords, which are arranged hierarchically. Just to précis this, basically it's got to have preferred terms to describe the clip. The use of synonyms, hypernyms, and antonyms compress the amount of words that are needed to be put into in the keywording. So, for example, we don't have to necessarily put close and shut, just so long as we're linking it in lexicons of grouped words or crowdsourced words, we're reducing the amount of data that needs to be uploaded. And also hot lists of conceptual or keywords that are familiar, because the regular searches are showing that people are finding linked words in that area will become words part of a vocabulary of control vocabulary. In order to build a hierarchy, we have to group topic maps, and this is an example of topic maps which will be used to start the structuring of a hierarchy. Basically, it's a bit like a skeleton, and around this skeleton, keywords and lexicons are interwoven and grow. I just want you to see this still frame of this man. Keywording for a still is just the same as it is for keywording for footage, except there is more information that's likely to be available from a piece of footage. So this man, he has a look that could be interpreted as being content or relaxed, or he might actually be angry, and he might have a feeling of hate. And it's only when we run the clip that we can actually see that he's very relaxed. And so keywording for footage means that you have to expand your experience of what's happening in that clip. And the demands of libraries worldwide has meant that people like us, the suppliers of footage, have to customize our metadata, because each library has got a different level of sophistication that they have in running their taxonomies or their keyword systems. So we have to produce more than one set. Some libraries, for example, who aren't as developed, will need us to supply full expanded keywords associated with, say, that clip. So if you see at the top, we have every derivative of the word man. We have to put in men, man, bloke, guy, male, you name it, we have to put it in, because there's an assumption that if somebody puts in men and we put man, it just won't be found. Now, there are some libraries that don't have that complicated taxonomy. Equally, the area in red is over 100 phrases and terms, which is conceptually describing what's going on in that clip. But in fact, the words, say, ambitious, confident and optimistic fairly well fit what that emotive movement was. But go-getter, egocentric and godlike are probably pushing it a bit. And what we need to do is to understand the balance between pushing the emotive keyword content and not annoying the searcher to find totally irrelevant clips and wasting their time. And this clearly is far too much, and would be axed by a lot of the bigger libraries. This, on the other hand, this clip of rock climbing couple, we would have to describe absolutely what's happening in terms of not just the physicality, but we'd have to do the age range and then put in the emotive keywords. If we happen to miss a point, this clip will go further and further back in the search engine until it will never be retrievable. So we have to make sure that this clip pops up when people are looking for a man or men rock climbing. I'm going to show you the Getty metadata format for this. As you can see, it's much more concise. As you heard before, that the metadata is actually just the group of information that surrounds the keyword. Metadata is not searchable, it's just information. Like at the top right, it's model released and property released. It's got the time code, it's got the file name, and it even has a headline and caption, but those are not searchable on keywords. The only thing that will ever find your clip are those group of keywords. And you can see there's one word for men. That's because in Getty's lexicon, if I put guy or male, it would find that clip, because their lexicon has compressed all those keywords together. Equally, under the emotive keywords, and later on, you'll see with a very small amount of probably more accurate keywords to describe what might be going on. In fact, Getty don't like you putting keywords in their emotive keywords, because they have so much dross that they have to farm out. But we tend to put in a few, and generally we get them through. There are lots of products on the market which help with keywording, and Word Map, you might be familiar with, is one of the ones that's much favoured by libraries. And basically it produces software which is information based. It's a bit like a thesaurus for the stock footage market. It creates drill down directories, it cross references for you, it clarifies terms, and also it'll find those synonyms and antonyms that would actually be very difficult for you to sit down and think by yourself. And it's worth, if any of you are looking at keywording, this piece of software is very worth looking at. We'll look at a few more interpretations. This monkey is intelligent, bright and smart, but we don't know that for sure. But we have a fair guess that that's going to denote some kind of emotive content. But we've also put evolution and vacation. Well, the monkey's not on holiday, and for sure it's not saying anything about evolution, but we know that the chances are that a company who might be doing some promotion on holidays, safari holidays, or a production regarding the evolution of man will find that clip, and they might not have actually thought of using a clip like that, but it can be a creative trigger. Similarly here, the keywords poisonous, nitrogen, toxins, they're not actually physically present, but there's an inference that might be there. And we also, the antonym here, the green word and the recycling, there's clearly nothing green about this clip, but anyone doing a production on relating to global warming would be driven to this clip if we put green, or likely to be driven to the clip, and it might spur or trigger on some creative thought process. There's a mixed feeling about conceptual keywording. A woman called Meredith Drake, who's a creative director for a large marketing company, says that very often if you put in words like love and sensuality, you find the most curious and bizarre results, and it's just a time-wasting element. But David Ferguson, for example, at Corbis, he has a whole team of researchers who make sure that the keywords that are being used actually generate sales. And so it's not one person who's responsible for the keywords. It ends up being a group of people who will end up deciding what words will be accepted. And finally, here we have the juxtaposition of this woman who is clearly aging and youthful at the same time. But putting those two words in while she's attempting to have plastic surgery will bring both aspects of the emotive content. Stock Footage Online is a very useful organisation. Members, libraries log as members, and producers can pose questions to Stock Footage Online or Stock Index in longhand. Like, for example, I'll get the question every day. I get requests from producers. Have you got a clip of someone surfing by the beach? And because we're lifestyle, well, we did have this. But most of all, it's editorial type footage, like this one, which I recently got. Have you got a clip of Iggy Pop launching off the stage at Glastonbury and into the audience, which we didn't have? But for sure, somebody will have had it and they will have just responded. That's Stock Footage Online. And it's a useful product. I want to turn my attention now onto production companies, because the importance of metadata and keywording is no less relevant to production companies. And of the 600 independent companies that I mentioned before, many of them are realizing they're sitting on this great untapped resource and not bringing it to the market in the way that HBO or ITN are. Their method of logging appears to be rather arbitrary, and retrieval of clips is sometimes haphazard and time-consuming. I mean, this is a typical example of logging, which you can see actually. You probably can't see the content from where you are, but it looks more like the notations act as aid memoirs to the people who are actually involved on the shoot. They're not detail specific, telling us where that clip is. And of course the frailties of this just emerge when that team or members of that team leave the company and the whole thing collapses. With the research undertaken by Price Waterhouse that the market is going to grow from the period 2008 to 2012 6.6% every year, and by the year 2012 the media content market will be worth $2.2 trillion. And it strikes me that production companies are just sitting on material that could form part of that content. Route 6 are working on ways in which production companies can actually develop their metadata systems, and it's something which I think should be encouraged, because it's a shame that this resource isn't coming to market, and very often I talk to production companies trying to get their content to bring to market for them. Finally, I'm just going to show you this clip, it's from a North American library, and it won a keywording award. Could you believe that there are keywording awards? And I just wanted to run this by you to see if you could guess what the keyword was that won the award. So there, that just about sums my bit up, and back over to you now.
Thank you, Anne. That's really great. So say obviously the lecture was defined as commercializing your library, and we just want to bring these elements to your minds here today. And I think there are a couple of very important examples, and some things we've also learned in preparing for this presentation. I think first of all, that log that we saw of a traditional production house and how they've logged their shoot. Very much the mentality and the keyword and the understanding was on the videotape is in someone's head. Okay, and although it's great for that person, it's no good for anyone else. And one of the interesting things we found out, we've seen production companies buy footage online which they know they have, but they can't find. Anyone want to admit to doing that before? I mean, that's a crazy thought, and this is one of the things. Now, the implication we've got is we've got this legacy, this library legacy that we have today. It's in tape format, and this is a very scary factor. You know, how do we move this forward? You know, and we're going to have to encode it, digitize it, but all of that technology is there to do that, and that technology is available today not only to encode it, it's also available to make it into all those various formats that Anne showed earlier on. So we can automate those functions now, but we've really got to start thinking about applying metadata to our footage in much, much greater detail. And it's steps that we've got to start taking now, because this problem's going to build up. You know, obviously this growth in the stock footage library, the $2.2 trillion, not pounds, probably will be pounds, it'll be the same by then anyway, business is an exciting business, and the fact that all of you have got this most amazing library that nobody knows about, and as I say, scarily enough, sometimes internally you don't know about it either. So we want to start working on those things and start getting metadata, and now's the time to start doing it. We can look at, you know, defining metadata schemas, getting the information at least recorded with it in preparation to ultimately expanding that into the marketplace. And once we understand we've got the ability to record that metadata, now when we go out shooting, and this is something we're starting to see quite a lot now, when people go out on the shoot and they say, okay, I'm out on the shoot, today I've got a helicopter pan of, you know, Big Ben, it's probably unlikely, but let's say Big Ben. Well, whilst I'm up there, although that's the only shot I want for my program, because I've got permission, I'm going to grab half a dozen other shots because I know those could be very valuable stock items. And now we can actually store that as keywords and put that down. Then ultimately we can expose that onto the internet and make that valuable search. So there really is a big opportunity to utilize some of these libraries and start doing it. But the big statement is we've got to start thinking about metadata, and we've got to start recording it now because we're building up our problem. One of the things that we've been working on at the moment, and Anne sort of mentioned it slightly, clearly keywording is a very difficult subject. There's obviously very logical keywords, time code in, time code out, location, actor's name, whatever you want to do on those things. But there's that emotive subjects that can be incredibly valuable when people are trying to search for specific types of say. Because they were actually involved in emotive description or whatever. You know, I like, you know, a romantic scene on the sunset of Kilimanjaro, you know, of which, you know, there was only, you know, one factual keyword and the rest of them were emotive. But that could be a very typical search in a production when they're trying to piece a program together. We know that material is shot somewhere, and then ultimately we can use libraries and stock footage and archives to actually make more and more programs, save us the cost of going out shooting and doing those things. So one of the technologies we're working with, and we're working with a conjunction with Reading University at the moment, is to actually be able to analyze video and actually understand the emotive content. Now, I'm by no ways is my forehead big enough to describe how to do that, but Reading University seem very, very convinced that they can do that, and we're working with them now to enable that. So the idea is for our existing archive libraries, you'll be able to scan your tape in, apply your factual keyword on those things, and then you'll be able to apply the final file through this process, this algorithm, which will then extrapolate keywords and then be able to apply those into those systems. Our purpose from there on, we heard another terminology, lexicon and Gettys. We have to think about how we are going to present keywording and these systems into the various outlets, and obviously iStock Photo, OmniMovi, Gettys, etc. are going to be very important gateways for all of us. And if we can find a way of translating lexicons between those, which is probably going to be a lot simpler than trying to extract emotive keywords, then, you know, those would be great gateways to actually go out to the world to sell our footage for us. So there's an opportunity to really make that footage work for us, and we're going to be working on automating that process now to make it much easier as we try to archive our existing libraries. Just for now, we talked about file-based acquisition and file-based workflow. We obviously, you know, we see file-based cameras, and there's a bit more information. There's a lot more metadata coming through those. We're going to see a big expansion in metadata logging on shoot. I don't know if you guys are coming across it now, but you're certainly going to see NAB, the technology show in Vegas in April. Certain manufacturers introducing specific XML loggers to actually allow us to expand our metadata on the shoots to allow that to come in. So start now, stop the problem from keep building up. There's an opportunity to not only utilize our video online, but also to use video that's actually out there on the web within our own programs to save the cost of reshooting, which is obviously a very expensive cost. So that completes our seminar. Hope you enjoyed that. We're certainly here for any questions and answers. Anyone got any specific questions at this moment? No? Well, I think you're there. If you want to come forward and have a chat, if you're too shy to ask a question in public, please do. And thank you very much.